Welcome to another Do As We Do Live, where we believe being unprepared is a caregiver's worst enemy. So we say knowledge is power, and starting the family conversation early and creating the right plan is the best way for caregivers and their loved ones to thrive. I am your host, Brian Crawford. Today I'm joined by my co host, Kimberly Scott and Sam Gaines. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Guys, we are breaking the chain of the unprepared caregiver cycle. So we ask you a hard question. Are you prepared for the time when you might have to become a full time caregiver for a loved one? Because as we always remind you, it's not about if they die, it's about if they live. So today is part two for our recap episodes. It's kind of a continuation of last week's show. We worked really hard to grab some of the best insights from a few of our past shows and our past interviews, and we decided we had so much great content that we would do this again. We'll run it back. Um, Today we're coming to you live as we normally do from our Do As We Do Facebook, our YouTube, our LinkedIn. We hope that you subscribe or follow us. Our goal is to continue to bring you as much value as we can each week, and we are working on more incredible guests and more value. So please feel free to ask questions, comments. This helps us to gather more valuable content for you. Tell us where you're watching from. And last, if you know someone that's going to find value out of the topics that we're talking about, please tag a friend. But Kimberly, I'm going to toss it up to you to
Yeah.
introduce us to our caregiver.
Thank you. Um, yes, sharing is caring. So make sure you hit the subscribe and the like and all that great stuff. Um, what are we doing here? And what or who is exactly a caregiver? Well, to define a caregiver for is someone that really helps a family member or a friend with their daily living activities. So, like going to the grocery store, with their medicines, going to their doctor's appointments. No matter the age or disability, if you're caring for another human being, and each day over 43.5 million caregivers. That's a new number from the AARP website. They go unpaid. So 43.5 million people do this labor of love. And we believe that they both deserve to live confidently and happily. But there's a problem that no one's really talking about, and that's what to do when it just happens upon them and they're have this unexpected life change and having to make all these overwhelming decisions on top of their daily lives and their daily activities and jobs. So many times caregivers go very silently. They're your neighbor, the person next door, and we're here to support those unpaid caregivers. And I'm going to let
And
Sam tell us a little bit more about the foundation.
yeah, and for these reasons, we launched the Do As We Do Foundation. We are here to provide consistent education and resources and meaningful topics to caregivers. And we're here to provide a supportive community that empowers existing caregivers. And very importantly, one of the primary reasons we created the foundation was to get people to have the conversation earlier. It's, as Kimberly always says, it's not about if you die, it's about if you live.
Yeah,
And
a
it's
long
important.
time.
We're all going to get old. There's a very good chance that most of us will need a caregiver for that reason alone. Um, but there's always a chance that any of us could need a caregiver at any moment. And it's important to prepare so that it's easier for the caregiver. It's easier for you. It's easier on everyone. So those are the reasons that we created the foundation. Simultaneously, since we launched during the pandemic, during these trying times, we created the Caregiver Relief Fund. This fund, which you can donate to at doaswedo.org at our website, we launched it to provide financial assistance to caregivers that are at risk of losing the roof over their head. Many caregivers work really odd jobs, servers. They work the
Two
hours
jobs.
that Yes, many of them were working more than one job, but they were working jobs that were not only hard to find that fit the schedule they needed to be able to take care of their loved one, but these are jobs in many cases that were lost early on in the pandemic and have not come back. And the money that they bring in, even if there is some money coming into their loved one, such as Social Security, it's never enough to cover all their needs. So if they lose the roof over their head, there's a solid chance that so is their loved one, the person that they care for. So we launched the Caregiver Relief Fund. And as of today, we've raised $3,558. You can donate again at our website, doaswedo.org. And the last thing I'll say on that is I just encourage you to think of, not covering someone's entire rent. A lot of these people are working odd jobs still, and they're resourceful in getting money from other areas, and they just need a little bit to get them over. It could be even just $50 or $100 that they need. So every dime that you give, no amount is too small. It can definitely help keep a roof over someone's head during these trying times.
Absolutely.
Really, really important stuff there. So are we ready to get into today's conversation?
Let's
I
do it.
think
I
so.
think
I
we
hope
are.
so.
So just as a reminder, we last week, if you didn't join us, we had kind of grabbed some important quotes from some of our guests that we've had on the show, and we've taken some key takeaways from them, and we ran out of time to cover all the different quotes that we wanted to. So again, today we're revisiting some of those topics and the takeaways from these interviews. And just as a quick reminder, what we kind of got to last week was, here are some of the takeaways that we got. One is, have the conversation early with your family. It is super important to get on the same page with them. Number two, it's not about if they die, it's about if they live. So talk to professionals, put a plan in place for your family, make sure you're on the same page with them. And number three, as a caregiver, as a future caregiver, you must have a few things. Have some unconditional love for your family and your friends. Have
Unconditional patience.
optimism,
A whole bunch of
Mhm.
patience.
optimism and patience, absolutely, and take great care of yourself. We may uncover some extra things today, but those were the three main themes that we took away from yesterday. I'm sorry, from last week. And Kimberly, I think you were ready with the first quote that we have in the
Yeah.
hopper. Um, Again, we had a, let's see, that was June 25th. We had an attorney, an elder law attorney. Her name was Lori Liu on, and she gave us some excellent tips on what to do, what to think about as it applies to your family legally. So this quote is, the place to start is not always where everyone would think, and it's not always just running to a lawyer. The first step is, let's open up the communication with mom and dad, and that kind of goes to our the first takeaway that we had was, have the conversation with your family early. Try to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. Don't wait, because
Yeah.
it could happen at any moment. It happened young for my mom, so I'll be the first to say, listen to what Lori Lou says, and just start having the conversation. And it's not where to bury them and what they want to wear at the funeral, any of that
Right.
stuff. It's really legitimately, hey, when if this ever happens to you, you can't, take care of, you can't walk, you can't talk, you can't anything, but you're still living, your heart is still beating. What do you want done? Those type of conversations
Mhm.
are very important. Is there long-term care? Is there anything, if you don't have long-term care, if you have a life insurance, is there a rider in that life insurance that will switch over to long-term care? Is there money saved away for incidences? All of it
Yeah.
is very important.
Guys,
Yeah.
what would you say? How early should we be having that conversation? Kimberly, you've gone through it. What's your
Now.
recommendation? Yeah.
Now.
It's never too early, right?
No, ever,
Yeah.
never. No,
Yeah.
you can't ever have it too early. And like and it is always uncomfortable, no matter who you're talking to. But if you both, even if I'm going to talk as an adult, like I'm, in my 40s, even if I were to just to had the conversation with, hey, mom and dad, if this happens to you guys, then XYZ, what do you want? And then even for me, because I don't like, if this happens, because some parents are taking care of their adult children because something happened to them, right?
Yeah.
So have the conversation no matter when, just have it.
Yeah.
Start the door.
Kimberly,
Yeah,
you're talking from an experience standpoint, having not done this and not having had that conversation earlier. What happened to you in your situation?
My mom she retired. My brother was in a serious accident, and my grandfather passed away. So she had all this stress that came upon, because stress induces dementia, memory loss, and thinking, so it when I realized that she was so behind on her bills, because she was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and because she was the person that rented out houses, and she was forgetting to go pay those mortgages, like she had multiple things going on in her life, and it just came to a crashing halt when she could no longer manage her the finances, the core being of what she was used to doing. So we had to sit down. We had an intervention from her friends. It was her friends that brought it up, and then we went to the doctor and just took it from there. But I wish I would have looked into alternative medicine back then, because she was so
Yeah.
young. Because there's so much out there now that you could go to before you go to do anything driven by pharmaceuticals, which I'm very grateful for. But at the same time, I wish I would have we taken a vacation, done some detoxing, done some oxygen, done a whole lot of other things.
Which brings us to someone that we had on back on May 28th, Melissa Foley. She was someone who had done a little bit of planning because of her unique situation earlier on in life, and then had something very catastrophic happen to her at a young age. Melissa is someone that we all know from the multifamily industry. She'd left the industry and went off and was just traveling the world, mostly in Africa. She'd finally settled in South Africa. She did a lot of mission work and volunteer work, a lot of nonprofit work. And she came back home to the States to visit for the holidays. She got here. She had an aortic dissection. She barely survived.
I wasn't able to say that last week.
Yeah. You have to say it a few times to remember it. It's not an easy one, but she had an aortic dissection, which is something that most people do not survive, and she fortunately did. But it was, it hit her. It's not one of those things that you get and it slowly gets worse. You get it. It's an emergency, and then if you survive, it's a battle. It's a journey to recover. Absolutely. To get to where she was at. And a great quote from her. That she gave us was essentially, talking about planning earlier. She said, right now, if you're healthy, go now. It's the time to get your stuff in order. Get all your legal documents. If you don't have life insurance, it's so cheap, and do it while you're young and healthy and you qualify.
That's the key.
Yeah. And in her case, it was such a unique thing, because she left to go to Africa. She knew that she would still need someone to do some things for her here back in the States. So she had given a power of attorney to one of her friends, and not even really thinking about her health, but just for legal reasons. And it ended up being a huge lifesaver. That friend, while Melissa was in an induced coma for days, that friend organized all kinds of stuff for her and got things going. And was able to get Melissa set up, and also make caregiving for Melissa a lot easier when she finally left the hospital.
Which it takes a village, and it took a village to care for Melissa. So it's never easy at all. No matter what.
We don't have this quote scheduled. I think we might have done it last time or touched on it, but I'm remembering from the Lori Lou conversation, she mentioned that the powers of attorney are the documents that you absolutely need to go forward with in your life. And those documents are what keep your assets safe and allow somebody to help protect your quality of life.
Quality of life is key words right there.
Yeah, right. And also, it's being conscious. Like with my parents now, they're both 70, and I've asked them, when you go to the doctor, make sure you update your HIPAA form to include me and my brother. There are only 2 children, to include us on there. Make sure they're each on there if they haven't done that. But at least start there. That's before you go to an attorney and get the power of attorney. That's simple for them to do. And that allows any doctor they have that they've given that HIPAA form to communicate with you. Even if you are the next of kin, it still is very helpful to have that. But the powers of attorney, there's more than one, as Lori Lou taught us.
Right.
They're very important, and it's really they're not giving you really much power now. They're giving you the power to use when you need it. When they're incapacitated, they've trusted you with this. If you need to pay the mortgage, you can go and write a check from their banking account.
Yeah.
You can do things like that. There's
you can access information. That's the key.
Yes.
And they can be
Yeah.
given information.
Yeah.
So really, people thinking about you losing any kind of control, it's just to
Yeah.
protect your way of life if you
Yeah,
could
like-
become ill.
Like Melissa, for example, she was self-employed. She was working for change, essentially, because she did so much nonprofit and volunteer work. And she could do that. She'd built a life around that, but then suddenly she needed healthcare and she didn't have it. So it worked out that her friend was able to find emergency healthcare for her, health insurance for her, while she was still incapacitated, and get it started, so that Melissa didn't have to wait and do that once she was able to herself.
And taking from her quote, she says, if I really could not have been as independent as I was so quickly, I don't know what I have done. Someone is going to would have gotten stuck with me, which is my biggest fear. It could happen to anyone, and it can. Like, we don't ever intend for accidents to happen, people. So if you're not having these conversations with anyone, then they can happen, and you don't want that to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of slid into the category from talking with you, having early conversations with your family, into having early conversations with the professionals in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So the lawyers and the financial folks and the doctors. Sam, I know you brought up the having the conversation with the doctors in your family and having the right forms for that as well. So all this it's a quick transition, but it all leads us kind of into the plan. And it doesn't always have to be so rigid, but if something bad happens, which is what Melissa is talking about, what do you do next? Because, and I like the last part of the quote, it could happen to anybody. It really could, which is why this is so important.
Yeah,
Go
it's
ahead.
definitely important. Like, especially someone who's young and healthy, like the three of us. If you have short-term and long-term disability insurance, which many of us do, if you are employed through a major corporation, it's super cheap to get it. If you don't have it, now's the time to look into it. I can speak from personal experience. I wish I'd had it when I was younger and had an accident. It would have helped me. But who knows that you have that other than HR and payroll? You need to tell you need to tell your parents, you need to tell your sibling, whoever would be the person to jump in and help you should you have an accident, Kimberly, like your brother did, or an accident or an incident like Melissa did. Like, someone needs to know that you have those things planned.
And Paul, thank you for joining us from LinkedIn. He says, yes, good point. And those for you who are dropping their children off at college for their freshman year, make sure you have the power of attorney of your children. It's easy to do, and it's very important, because even though those kids are now, they're adults, that means there's you just don't know. Like, what if they get put in the hospital? Is the hospital going to allow that parent to come in and find out information about them?
Mm-hmm.
It's highly unlikely, but why even risk it? So good point, Paul.
Absolutely.
Another thing that we learned from Lori Lou, that if your parents are hesitant and they have some issues, you might consider hiring a third party, which they also call them life care managers, to help in the whole process. That was something that was multiple people, have said, but Lori Lou really hit on, that when you're in that process of having those conversations, and if they feel uncomfortable, like my dad's barely coming around now, but in the beginning he was very not so good with even talking about those things, right? And but that he sees, and my parents are divorced and they've been divorced since I was 1, but my dad sees what I'm going through and the decisions I'm having to make for my mother. So he
Mhm.
almost feels guilty, if you will, doesn't want to be another burden or headache. And not that he is, but the actions are the actions of having
Yeah.
to make those decisions are crippling. Like
Yeah.
Sam, you've said before, like a
Yeah.
good point was like, it's the decision making that if you don't have those conversations can
Yeah.
really make you freeze.
Yeah, and
I think,
another
go
dynamic
ahead,
to
Sam.
life care manager is, family is complicated. I'm
Mm-hmm.
fortunate that I don't have a lot of siblings in this case. Now that as my parents are getting older, I'm grateful for that. And my brother and I tend to typically agree on what we would do if this happened and that happened, but it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
Whether it's family or other loved ones that are involved. So having a third party that's also an expert in these things, a life care manager that can tell you the hidden secrets, the things you don't know about that you may have access to or that could be helpful. It can be very helpful to have those people managing it for you to get your loved ones set up for the proper way and get everyone on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And guys, I think when we're talking about talking to the professionals, basically what we're trying to say is you don't have to shoulder the whole burden.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to take it
Yeah.
on. You use these professionals because they are the experts, just like
Right.
Sam says here. They know more than you because they've been doing this their whole life and getting prepared for it. This is part of their career. It's part
Mm-hmm.
of their path, and they're here to help you.
Yeah.
So use them. But
Mm-hmm.
another thing that, and moving into our next and final sort of topic, is as a caregiver, part of this is having hope and being able to take good care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So as if you guys have been on a plane, what do they tell you to do? They tell you to put your mask on first before you take care of the person next to you, so
Yeah.
you can assist them. And our friend Steve Salami has said that I think it's important for caregivers. You have to put your mask on first. That means take care of yourself, take healthy, wise care of yourself. If anybody wants to add on to that, I'm kind of at a loss for words. But
Yeah,
Well,
honestly, obviously Kimberly can definitely speak to this, but
yeah.
the truth is if you step into that caregiver role, whether you step in or you're thrust into it, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes your responsibility. If it is still your responsibility and that person, that loved one is reliant on you and something happens to you and there is no one else, it's just like a parent disappearing when they have young children. You have to take care of yourself. You have
Yeah.
to look for support. You have to reach out. You have to, especially during times like these, stay in touch with
Yeah.
your friends and your family, those that motivate you. You have to, there has to be self-care.
Yeah, and just like isolation is bad for no matter what human being that is, an animal, like isolation is not good for the caregiver to just be isolated with the person that they're caring for. If they don't keep up some, even it's 1 hour a day to themselves, it will drive that, it's not good. Like
Yeah.
took a little stint in the hospital and everybody was worried because I'm the main caregiver of all my mother's stuff, right? And so luckily it was short, but still it was worrisome because then who would be next, right? Like who would take
Right.
on that responsibility? So shame on me for not, taking time out to refill my cup and be able to, I mean, it's eating healthy, and extra, like some sort of exercise and
Mhm.
interaction other than with your loved one. It has to be something or someone else outside
Yeah.
of your immediate every single day with your loved one. You have to.
And I go sticking to the air travel analogy, you don't always have a co-pilot. In your case,
Yes.
Kimberly, you do have family that can step in and help to some extent, but you're doing it every day constantly. There's so many decisions and things that you're doing that
Mm-hmm.
they aren't aware of or they don't know a lot about. And if suddenly they have to do it, it can be a nightmare for them. So I would say if you have the option to try to train a co-pilot, someone, whether it's multiple
Yeah.
people that can step
Yeah.
in and do the two halves of what you do, get a
Mm-hmm.
couple of people to make sure other people are in the know, have a
Yeah.
plan for backup.
Yeah. And
my go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
My mom and my grandma. My mom is pretty much a full-time caregiver for my grandma right now, and they've had a conversation just because of the times right now. Like, what happens if my mom gets
Hmm.
coronavirus? What if she goes to town and something happens, right? There's we were kind of talking that through. What's the solution? Like
Hmm.
who is
Who
able
steps in?
to,
That's
who
them.
can step in? Yeah,
Right.
you have to have that backup plan.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, so obviously we have some work to do. But
At
all of
least,
this is a work in progress, and coronavirus, COVID, has just kind of exacerbated
yeah.
everybody's decision making here.
But at least
Yeah.
you guys have like even had the thought, like at least that's on their, on their mind to
Yep.
even hope, maybe write it down, maybe start taking some notes, so that you
Hmm.
guys can come together and have that conversation. But
Hmm.
Yeah,
it definitely
there.
leads us into the advice from what Melissa Foley, told us that
Mhm.
her advice to caregivers is to do what you can and find your own support group for your self-care. So if it's, one that's online, then do that. If it's, but
Mhm.
and still get outside, but
Yeah,
it
and
definitely is very important.
there's, and obviously, now it's, you don't want strangers coming into the home, and you don't want lots of people
Hmm.
coming and going if you are taking care of a loved one that has some type of chronic illness. But, you know, don't feel like you have to carry the burden all yourself. If someone can come, once a week and give you a couple of hours to yourself, do it. Don't feel
Hmm.
guilty. You
Yeah,
don't have to be there. You can walk away and take a breath for yourself. And those 2 hours a week could mean so much more, and lengthen your ability to take care of the person that relies on you completely.
absolutely, 100%.
I think everybody's there. All the guests that we have on are ultimately saying the same things.
Hmm.
We are trying to break the unprepared caregiver cycle. We're trying to help our caregivers be more prepared for when situations happen.
Hmm.
And, the ideal is that you talk to your family, you have a conversation with the professionals in your life, you get everybody on the same page, and you put a plan in place. And as you're doing that and as you're living out your lives, take care of yourself so you can take care of your loved ones. I think those are the great takeaways that we've gotten from all of our guests as
So
we've had our lives each week. But guys, remember, you can catch these full interviews on our YouTube channel and on Facebook from each of these guests. And thank you guys for spending another week and spending some time with us. And I'm gonna toss it over to Sam to kind of start closing us out.
And just, to remind everyone, the Do As We Do Foundation, we launched the foundation to provide consistent education and resources on meaningful topics to caregivers, to also provide them with financial support, and to provide them with a community that helps empower them and make them better caregivers. We also launched, as I mentioned earlier, the Caregiver Relief Fund. All donations, every dime that goes to that, go to help keep a roof over a caregiver's head. There's a lot of caregivers at risk of losing housing right now due to the pandemic, due to the crisis. So any donation, no donation is too small. Please visit our website, doaswedo.org, to donate. And also, most importantly, if you know someone, a caregiver, that could be at risk, that could need support right now, you can also send them to our website, doaswedo.org. They can apply for assistance there. We work with a partner called Approve Shield, that makes sure that we avoid all fraud, and we vet every single applicant, and make sure we provide them with the assistance that they desperately need. So again, no donation is too small. And please send anyone, any caregiver in need, that's at risk for eviction, to apply at doaswedo.org.
Our
Yes.
caregivers need help.
Yes, yes, definitely. And we want to say a big thank you. I'm going to throw our sponsors up here from Spherix, from helping us with the overall website and our technology, Approve Shield with the assistance on the application. I'm a soap addict with and founder Diana Benitez with Blue Jay Nutra. Those are some partners of ours. Big shout out to Rick and Eddie. Hustle Aesthetics, Rich B, Salon D, Short Productions, and AK Realty. We just want to thank everyone for jumping on the caregiver bandwagon with us, and helping us spread the word of what we're trying to do, trying to educate early on, so that future caregivers don't go unprepared. They might go unpaid. We can't change laws just yet, but but we can hope that people will get more educated and really start to plan so that they can chip away at this instead of having it thrust at them all at once, because it's definitely can become overwhelming. So
Yeah.
leave comments if you have any questions. Please leave them in the comment section. We do thank you all for joining us. We had Paul earlier, and Brandon, and everyone who watches on the replay. Please put in where you watched us from. If there's a certain quote that you enjoyed or that you learned a lot from, we want to know. We definitely want to keep the lines of communication open. And if there's a topic you want us to cover, we want to know that. So please leave that in
Yeah.
the comments as well.
And
So
if I can add one thing, if you're watching now and you are an expert in any area, it could be financial advisor, legal, medical, psychological, any of that stuff,
Or know
anything
somebody.
yes, or know someone that's in those areas, we would love to talk to you and have you on and help you provide some insight that can help future caregivers and existing caregivers.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder, Sam. Yes. And thank you again, everyone. Next week, we'll have Jennifer Fink she has a caregiving podcast. We're excited to visit with her next week. So tune in next Thursday, same time. And until then, remember, sharing is caring, and it takes the village, everyone. See you later.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.